much fun this year's draft, but it's in the book, so it's that time of year. Way too early mock draft season. Our Jordan Reed put together this gem. One note before we dive in. Jordan did not make the order. It's based on the inverse Super Bowl odds from ESPN Bet. Little weedsy, but Jordan, take us through your top three, starting with a trade up to number one. I love it.
Yeah, the 2026 NFL Draft is only 356 days away. Not like I'm counting or anything, Laura, but at number one overall, we have Cade Klubnik, the quarterback out of Clemson. There's a lot of excitement about him. He reminds me a lot of Bo Nix when he was coming out of Oregon a few seasons ago. Very good staying on script. He's really good playing inside of the pocket, outside of the pocket. I go back to that final game in the college football playoff against Texas. He was phenomenal in that one. 336 passing yards, 3 touchdowns in that one as well. He made a huge improvement from his sophomore to his junior season, a huge bump up, and I'm expecting him to continue on that extension this season, now with another season under offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. The next one is Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, a huge offensive tackle at 6'7", 360 pounds. He's a consistent run blocker. Needs to clean up his pass protection. That's an area where he needs to improve next season, but I think he's going to be one of the best offensive linemen in the country now that we know he's going to be that. The player that I'm a huge fan of is Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. Yes, Clemson is very loaded on both sides of the ball this year. I think he's going to be in contention to be the first non-quarterback off of the board, along with Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. Peter Woods at 6'3", 315 pounds, very reminiscent of Christian Wilkins when he was coming out a few seasons ago. Very bouncy athlete, very stout at the point of attack as well. They primarily rush him off of the edge, surprisingly, but I think they're going to play him more inside next season. So look for him to be the first non-quarterback off of the board in 2026. Now, some other guys at the position at quarterback that scouts are already really excited about. Lenore Sellers of South Carolina. It would not be surprising if he ends up putting himself in contention to be the number one overall pick. Reminds me a lot of Donovan McNabb and a more polished Anthony Richardson. Really good athlete, but still needs some refinement as a passer. Some other names, Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. There was a lot of excitement about him early on in the season, but he tapered off a little bit as the season went on. Had 4 games with multiple interceptions, but a lot of scouts are excited about him coming back for another season. And then Drew Aller, a big quarterback at 6'5", 238 pounds out of Penn State. There was a lot of excitement about him, and some people thought he even could have came out of this past year's draft and being that first-round selection. Going back to school another year, his completion percentage went up from 60% to 66.5%. He's done a good job developing under offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki.
And it does show you, I know it's early, but next year's quarterback class is loaded. And that's 4 quarterbacks you have there in the top 8 picks, Jordan. But we didn't see Arch Manning in there, and some fans are like, what in the world? Why is that? Why is Arch not there?
Yeah, I'm still getting tweets about that on social media. March for Arch, planning for Manning. I hear the phrases already from fans, but it's turning quarterbacks like Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones into potential first-round players. I don't think Arch Manning is going to be in any rush, so it wouldn't be surprising if we don't see him until 2027 or even 2028, Laura.
Yeah, it's just not the Manning way either, and he's going to stay in line, I believe, with what his family's done. I'm excited for Texas next season. All right, let's get back to the Browns, who Jordan has trading up to take a quarterback number 1 overall in 2026, which is interesting. Here's their quarterback room right now. They have Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Deshaun Watson. Plus, they drafted both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders this year. Of course, Dillon Gabriel was drafted before Shedeur. Tim, how do you see things shaking out with this group?
Well, listen, I mean, the reality of it when you see it is like it's hard for 5th-round draft picks to make the football team. And it doesn't matter what your name is, especially at the quarterback position. And then when you look at the lineup, you just outlined, Joe Flacco is going to be the day 1 starter. That's why he's there. But he's also hasn't started, a full season in 7 years. And so Kenny Pickett is very valuable because Kenny Pickett started games for the Super Bowl winning, Philadelphia Eagles a year ago. He's got a tremendous value as a backup in the National Football League. So this idea that you just ship Kenny Pickett off and go with 2 rookie quarterbacks behind Joe Flacco, I don't think that Kevin Stefanski is going to feel great about doing that. And so then I think when you look at, Dillon Gabriel, look, he's a better prospect in the eyes of the Cleveland Browns. They took him 2 rounds earlier than they took Shedeur Sander. So there aren't enough reps to go around. I think people need to understand this. You could have a period in practice where you have a 14-play 7-on-7 period. Well, like the starter Flacco is going to get 7 of them. Flacco. Then you're going to have 5, that go to Kenny Pickett, your backup. Well, you have 2 reps left that probably go to the 3rd guy. So it's hard. I've lived it as the 4th quarterback at times where you're there, you watch practice a lot. You don't even get a chance to prove that you're good enough to make the team. And I think that's the fear if you're Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, listen, I hate to disagree with my fellow Eagle right here, but if you're the Cleveland Browns, first of all, we know what Joe Flacco is at this point in his career. The last time we saw Joe Flacco in the Cleveland Browns uniform, he was out there throwing picks to the opposition, the Houston Texans. We know what he is. Kenny Pickett has been on 3 teams in what, a year time or whatever it is, 2 years. We know what Kenny Pickett is. If you're the Cleveland Browns, you have 2 first-round picks in 2026. I think the priority has to be what we need to evaluate both of our draft picks, both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sander, to see if either one of those guys can possibly be the quarterback solution. Because if either one of those guys hits, then that just only increases the values of those 2 2026 draft picks in the first round. So I think the focus should be on the rookies. We know what the veterans are right now.
Listen, Wood, I don't disagree with you that your assessment of Flacco and Pickett, I agree with. I think you're right. You also have a staff and an organization that's like, we got to try to win some games, and so we're going to do it with a guy that it went 3 rounds before someone felt comfortable picking him, and a guy that it went 5 rounds before somebody was comfortable picking him. Like, we're going to roll into the season with those 2 guys. And look, I'm not saying that a team can't keep 4 quarterbacks. We've seen it before. At one point, Tom Brady was the 4th quarterback on a roster, behind Bledsoe, Hewitt, and Michael Bishop. Like, it can happen. I think that. Look, Flacco's there for a reason. They're paying him the way they're paying him for a reason. And Kenny Pickett was acquired because he's proved himself to, at a minimum, be a quality backup. So you just run out of time and reps to evaluate young players at the quarterback position.
So the Browns look at the roster as value through the prism of value and currency. So that could lead to some trade opportunities when you have 4 quarterbacks to recoup some of the picks that they just gave up for Dillon Gabriel, for Shedeur Sanders, that they felt was too good a value in the 5th round to pass up on. They gave up the 5th round pick to get Kenny Pickett in a trade. And so if one of them plays well in the preseason, it could lead to some opportunities somewhere else where they take that number from 4 to 3. And you mentioned Gabriel, Tim. I was told in the draft, even in the days leading up, from other teams that the Browns were really high on Gabriel and that his ability as a passer and feel for the game, a lot of teams were high on, more so than maybe the media. He's just very small and probably limited as a skill set compared to some other players, but Browns really like the player.
It's interesting. I mean, you never know which teams may end up needing a quarterback that don't need one right now. Things can change for sure, but Tim, I think that view